several villagers rushed forward and kicked Xiao Guang in the face, breaking his nose and knocking out several teeth. Xiao Guang's mouth was full of blood, his face was swollen, and he couldn't say a complete sentence. Gao Tianwu saw this and was filled with rage. He stared at Meng Chuan and shouted, "If you have a problem, take it out on me. Don't hurt my brother. Meng Chuan, you just want to be the village chief, right? I can give it to you. Let us go." Meng Chuan's narrow eyes flashed with a look of satisfaction, and the smile on the corner of his mouth resembled that of a cunning fox. Gao Tianwu, he lowered his head and leaned close to Gao Tianwu, smiling and saying, "You're finally getting what you deserve. I can't stand you. What gives you the right to be the boss? Today, I'm taking your position," and he opened his eyes, revealing a fierce and cold gaze. "I want all of your lives." Gao Tianwu's heart sank. If it was just the position of village chief being taken away, that would be fine, but these villagers actually wanted the lives of him and his brothers? Why? He raised his neck in resentment and asked angrily. "I've been the village chief for a year and have done everything I can to keep the village alive. We protected the village and drove away countless groups of vagabonds. We braved the wind and snow to find food for you. Are you all such ungrateful people?" Gao Tianwu roared in anger, so angry that he almost spat blood. No one could accept being betrayed by the people they had worked so hard to protect. Hearing his words, the villagers around him looked hesitant. After all, what Gao Tianwu said was true. They had indeed sacrificed a lot for Gao Yuan village. Hearing this, the people around Meng Chuan immediately shouted angrily. "Shut up! You are from Gao Yuan village. What are you talking about protecting the village? Didn't the villagers protect you? It was your duty to contribute to the collective, and now you come here to take credit for it. Have you no shame? How much grain did you embezzle as village chief? Do you really think we don't know? I saw with my own eyes you stealing the collective's grain and running off to hide it." Gao Tianwu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Gao Yuan village protected him? How ridiculous! He and his younger brother Xiao Guang were both mutants. After the apocalypse, they could have lived well with the group of brothers around them, relying on their own abilities. At that time, out of a sense of camaraderie as fellow villagers, they had resolutely stood up to protect the village. Without them, Gao Yuan village would never have been able to fight against the surrounding large villages with their large populations. Not to mention the gang of vagabonds who later came with weapons to rob them. How could Gao Tianwu and the others' sacrifices now be taken for granted in their mouths? As for the matter of him stealing grain, Gao Tianwu hurriedly explained, "You misunderstood. I didn't steal the grain, I took it to hire someone to solve the cockroach problem we had a while ago." Meng Chuan smiled coldly and kicked him directly in the chest, causing Gao Tianwu to gasp for air and his face to turn red. At a time like this, who would listen to your nonsense? Gao Tianwu glared fiercely at Meng Chuan, but Meng Chuan suddenly crouched down, grabbed his hair, and said with a cold smile in his ear, "Don't you understand the situation? Everyone is already in action, and there's no turning back. So no matter what your reasons are, tonight, you're going to die." Meng Chuan's words made Gao Tianwu's heart turn cold. He glared at Meng Chuan angrily and roared, "Meng Chuan, you!" Meng Chuan didn't let him speak, but instead punched him twice in the chest. At that moment, Gao Tianwu had just finished a long day of work and was extremely weak. He was beaten so badly that he couldn't speak and coughed violently. "Light a fire and boil some water. Boil these heartless people and serve them as a special meal for the masters." Meng Chuan shouted triumphantly. Hearing this, the villagers' eyes lit up, and they were all excited, smiling from ear to ear, their scarlet tongues licking their dry lips. It had been a year since the end of the world, and this kind of thing was nothing absurd to them. Moreover, they had been drinking thin porridge for half a month and were already starving. It would be nice to improve their diet a little. A blazing fire burned under the large pot, and the snow in the pot quickly melted. The villagers cheered excitedly. Gao Tianwu was held down by two people with his face pressed against the ground. He was powerless to struggle and could only watch as his brothers were thrown into the pot to be boiled alive. Stop! Stop, you animals! Don't touch them! If you want to eat, eat me instead! Gao Tianwu roared in grief and anger, his eyes so red they were about to bleed. When he thought about how they had worked so hard to protect such a bunch of beasts, he felt heartbroken and angry as if he were drowning. Meng Chuan looked up at the sky and laughed wildly, ha ha ha. Don't worry, take your time. There are hundreds of families in our village, and not a single one of you brothers will be left alive. Xiao Guang and the others roared in despair and anger, seeing that they were about to be thrown into the boiling pot. At this moment, on a small mountain not far away, Zhang Yi and Liang Yu were watching everything. After receiving the information, Zhang Yi immediately brought Liang Yu over. When Liang Yu saw the situation in Gaoyuan village, a look of pity flashed in her eyes, and the villagers' ungrateful behavior made her clench her fists. But she didn't act rashly, instead looking at Zhang Yi beside her. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and watched everything in front of him with great interest. These villagers had nothing to do with him, and he didn't care how they survived or what kind of melodramatic things would happen between them. But for some reason, when he saw Gao Tianwu being held down and rubbed on the ground, his face full of despair and resentment, he saw himself being torn apart like a pig. Moreover, he had heard Gao Tianwu say something. Gao Tianwu knew that someone could deal with the cockroach tide, and he protected the entire Gaoyuan village from being completely destroyed. These two reasons were enough. Zhang Yi. Liang Yu said in a somewhat pleading tone, her eyes full of earnestness. Zhang Yi raised the corners of his mouth and smiled faintly, go save those people. Liang Yu's eyes lit up, she nodded, and in a flash, she disappeared from the small mountain. Just as the villagers were cheering and jumping for joy, about to throw Xiao Guang and the others into the big pot to cook them, a hurricane rushed over. Boom! A terrifying explosion erupted from the air, and more than a dozen villagers were blown away dozens of meters away. They then crashed heavily into the snow. Xiao Guang and the others fell to the ground, but at least they didn't fall into the boiling water. The sudden turn of events startled everyone. Gao Tianwu froze for a moment, as if he had seen a savior. Meng Chuan directly pulled a dagger from his sleeve and pointed at Liang Yu with a look of fear on his face. Who are you? Why are you interfering with the affairs of Gaoyuan village? I advise you to leave immediately, otherwise we won't be polite. Liang Yu looked coldly at Meng Chuan and rebuked, let them go. Meng Chuan swallowed hard, this. What does this have to do with you? Before Liang Yu could say anything, Zhang Yi walked out of the space door beside her. Zhang Yi looked at Liang Yu and said coldly, you are too indecisive. As soon as he finished speaking, a black tentacle suddenly stabbed out from Meng Chuan's chest. The blood instantly solidified, and Meng Chuan lowered his head in a daze, then collapsed to the ground, completely powerless. Guys like this will only cause trouble if we let them live. Just kill them, Zhang Yi said indifferently. Liang Yu hesitated slightly, I wanted to reason with them. After all, they're just ordinary villagers. Zhang Yi shook his head helplessly, pitiful people must have something hateful about them, there's no need to sympathize with them. The villagers around them saw this scene and were scared silly. No matter how stupid they were, they knew that they had encountered powerful mutants. Because Gao Tianwu and Xiao Guang were mutants. If they hadn't been out looking for supplies all day and were physically and mentally exhausted, they wouldn't have dared to attack them. Mutants possessed extremely powerful abilities that ordinary people couldn't match. Zhang Yi glanced at the few guys who had been laid on the ground. Although he didn't feel sorry for these people, they were saved by him and Liang Yu after all. If they died like this, he would lose face. Although Meng Chuan was dead, he still had accomplices. Seeing that Zhang Yi and Liang Yu were only two people, they were frightened and held back all the villagers. They knew that they had to do something, otherwise, once Gao Tianwu was freed from captivity, they would suffer. The villagers exchanged glances, and someone immediately rushed forward from behind Zhang Yi with a shovel raised. Several others reached into their clothes and pulled out pistols. Bang! Spikes suddenly appeared out of thin air and pierced through their bodies. This group of people didn't even have time to shout a proper slogan before their lives flowed out of the huge holes in their chests. The villagers were so scared that they trembled all over, and many even wet their pants and ran away crying for their parents. Zhang Yi ignored them completely and walked over, snapping the rope binding Gao Tianwu with a flick of his finger. Thank you. Gao Tianwu gasped for air, which turned into thick white mist. Zhang Yi said indifferently, if you want to thank me, then thank me properly. Let me ask you, where's the person you said could help you get rid of the cockroaches? Gao Tianwu struggled to his feet. He glanced at his brothers not far away. Although Xiao Guang and the others were also extremely disheveled and weak, after putting on the cotton clothes Zhang Yi had given them, their complexions were clearly recovering, and they wouldn't die in the short term. Gao Tianwu looked at Zhang Yi and Liang Yu, thank you both for saving me and my brothers. You can ask me to do anything, even give my life, and I will do it. But that person has done Gao Yuan village a great favor, so I absolutely cannot reveal his personal information. I'm really sorry. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. I didn't expect you to be such a man of principle. Don't worry, I just want him to help me get rid of the cockroaches, nothing else. As long as he can help me with this, I can give you a very generous reward. Hearing Zhang Yi say this, and considering that these people had saved his life, Gao Tianwu said, all right, but I have to ask him first. Please forgive me. He bowed his head and spoke apologetically. Zhang Yi smiled indifferently. He wasn't in a hurry, so he let Gao Tianwu make the arrangements. Gao Tianwu pointed at Xiao Guang and the others and said, my savior, can I take care of my brothers first? Zhang Yi said, as soon as possible. Gao Tianwu hurried over. Although he was very weak and injured, he still struggled to help his brothers up and took them to the room to warm up. At this moment, Gao Yuan village was completely silent. The villagers were panicked and ran home, then secretly watched Gao Tianwu's door. They were anxious and didn't know what to do. Would Gao Tianwu take revenge on them later? They had no idea, but it was freezing cold outside, and leaving the village would quickly lead to death. This has nothing to do with us. It was all Meng Chuan's doing. He shouldn't hate us. When the time comes, as long as we all go over and apologize to him, he probably won't hold a grudge against the entire village. Let's all say a few nice words and flatter him, and maybe he'll forget about this incident. The villagers comforted themselves with these thoughts, and their mood relaxed a little. Gao Tianwu carefully arranged for his brothers to lie down and rest, then lit the stove to keep them warm. After everything was ready, he came out of the house and said to Zhang Yi and Liang Yu, you too, I can tell that you are not ordinary people. So this time, I'll take you straight to find that friend of mine. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded, smart. Liang Yu asked in a low voice, why did he change his mind? Zhang Yi said, in his current state, even if we really want to follow him, he can't do anything. It's better to be generous and take us there ourselves, so we can make a good impression. Liang Yu nodded, I see. Gao Tianwu led Zhang Yi and Liang Yu toward the northwest of the village. Zhang Yi chatted with him casually and asked, what are you going to do with your village? According to Zhang Yi's personality, if those guys betrayed him, there would only be one outcome. The neighbors in the Yuelu neighborhood should be very familiar with this. Gao Tianwu lowered his head, his expression very serious. After a long time, he sighed deeply. What do they know? They're just a bunch of ignorant farmers who are easily swayed. The two of you killed the culprit, and I am very grateful for that. As for the villagers, I won't do anything to them. Hearing this, Zhang Yi was about to sneer. However, Gao Tianwu immediately changed his tone, but I'm not stupid. From now on, I will completely part ways with them and have nothing more to do with them. Zhang Yi nodded silently. You're an interesting person. He found Gao Tianwu to be quite interesting. This person's personality was somewhat similar to Uncle Yu's. They were both a little bit of a good-natured old man, with a touch of idealism. Fortunately, he wasn't stupid, otherwise he would have ended up like Liang Yu. A person who could protect his village for 3 years in the end of the world was truly admirable. The group strolled along, heading northwest. Zhang Yi was in no hurry and did not use his space shuffle ability. Instead, he walked along, chatting with Gao Tianwu. Unexpectedly, the two found that they got along quite well. Gao Tianwu was 1 year younger than Zhang Yi and had also worked in Tianhai City before. Their educational backgrounds and knowledge were similar. After the apocalypse, Zhang Yi had always been wary of everyone, and this was the first time he had ever chatted with someone his own age. The people around him either loved him or respected him, but he had few friends who could accompany him in normal conversation. Now that he had met Gao Tianwu, it was a rare opportunity to chat about everyday matters. However, this was also because Gao Tianwu appeared at the right time. If it had been 6 months ago, Zhang Yi would have either stayed away from such a wild mutant or killed him with his sword. How could he be so calm now? To put it bluntly, he had become more powerful, and his mindset had changed. After some small talk, he learned that Gao Tianwu and his cousin Gao Chanwang were both mutants. However, the two had little contact with other mutants and didn't have much of an idea of their own strength. They only knew that they were near Gaoyuan village and had experienced many battles, big and small. There had been battles with neighboring villages and with some wandering bandits, but because of them, Gaoyuan village had never suffered any major losses. Zhang Yi became somewhat interested. What was the most valuable thing after the apocalypse? Talent was the most valuable, and even the high and mighty Blizzard City had begun to recruit talent from the outer cities. After several large-scale battles, Tianhai City had already lost most of its talent, so Zhang Yi hoped to select a few trustworthy and powerful mutants to maintain order in Tianhai City. Therefore, during their conversation, he considered Gao Tianwu. Faced with Zhang Yi's questions, Gao Tianwu knew the huge gap between him and Zhang Yi, so he didn't hide anything and told him the truth. My ability is called 5 Roads of Enlightenment because after I awaken my supernatural abilities, I can control 5 different powers. When Zhang Yi heard this, his gaze toward Gao Tianwu changed slightly. Only the most special trait system mutants could possess multiple abilities at the same time. These mutants were unpredictable, with strange abilities that could not be easily classified. Mutants with this type of ability usually had a higher upper limit. Zhang Yi silently kept this in mind and didn't say anything, intending to meet the person Gao Tianwu had mentioned before discussing it further. After more than 10 minutes, Gao Tianwu brought Zhang Yi to a frozen lake. The entire lake was frozen solid, with many holes in it, which looked like they had been made by villagers trying to catch fish. But this was not the Heron River, after all, and there weren't many fish in the lake. Zhang Yi looked around and couldn't help but ask, "Where's your friend?" As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but open fields and no houses. Gao Tianwu said, "Please wait a moment." With that, he walked to the front of the frozen lake, picked up a piece of broken ice, and began tapping on the surface of the lake. Knock, knock, knock. 3 taps in a row, very rhythmic. Zhang Yi was still puzzled. Could it be that the ice lake had been hollowed out and someone was living here? Just then, a large amount of ice and snow suddenly appeared from an ice cave, followed by a large creature that emerged from below, its 2 huge eyes staring in Zhang Yi's direction. Croak! Zhang Yi's eyes slowly widened, staring at the pair of bright, sparkling eyes peeking out from the ice. Although it was already nighttime and the light on the ice was not very bright, it was clearly a large, dark creature with a round head. Especially its eyes, which were bulging upward. Huh? Zhang Yi's mind was filled with questions. What was this thing? Before Zhang Yi could ask, the dark creature jumped up from under the ice. Wow! Gao Tianwu, long time no see. Are you here to bring me food again? Ribbit, you are such a kind person. If I had a daughter, I might consider marrying her to you. It wasn't until he jumped out of the ice that Zhang Yi could see what he looked like. The thin moonlight and snowlight revealed his huge, round body and long limbs. It was a giant frog. It was covered in mud, but it stood up like a human, with its hands on its hips, talking to Gao Tianwu. Mutant? Mutant beast? Zhang Yi was a little confused at this point. If it was a human, then why would it live in mud? If it was a mutant beast, then how could it speak human language? Liang Yu was also confused, but due to a woman's instinctive dislike of frogs, she silently retreated behind Zhang Yi. The frog also saw Zhang Yi, and its big eyes lit up. Croak. Are these your friends? Gao Tianwu. They look interesting. Gao Tianwu explained to the frog, they are my saviors. They just saved my life, they want to come over and ask for your help. Gao Tianwu looked at Zhang Yi. Mr. Zhang, this is the person I told you about who can help you solve your cockroach problem. After hearing the whole story, the frog rolled its big eyes and walked towards Zhang Yi. He was covered in thick mud, but it looked like a natural protective layer to help him ward off the cold. Is that a new type of clothing? Zhang Yi kindly asked him. The frog looked at his arms and realized that he was covered in mud. Rib bit. That seems very rude. Please wait a moment. He took a few steps back, then shook himself vigorously, and the mud quickly fell off his body. Zhang Yi noticed that his skin was not as shiny and smooth as that of an ordinary frog, but covered with a layer of fine hairs that were impossible to see without looking closely. Underneath the downy hair was very thick fat, which was obviously what allowed him to stay warm without clothes during the Ice Age. After shaking off the mud, the frog walked up to Zhang Yi like a human being. His eyes were large, slightly bigger than Zhang Yi's mouth. His big mouth was always turned up at the corners, making him look like he was smiling. Croak. Hello, my friend. I am a frog, My name is Haruki Murakami, but you can also call me Village Chief. Croak, croak, croak. I really like this name, croak, croak, croak. Zhang Yi hugged his arms and suddenly laughed. Okay, at least we can confirm that you are a mutant. Because frogs can't read, let alone give themselves a name like Haruki Murakami. The frog shook his head. Oh, that doesn't matter. Zhang Yi asked him his name again, but the frog just shook his head. The past is no longer important. We have to look forward, croak. So you can call me Village Chief. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. I think calling you Toad is not bad. When the frog heard this, he was so angry that he stamped his feet. Oh, no! I'm a frog, not a toad. Rib bit. Gao Tianwu hurried over to smooth things over. Okay, you're a frog, we all know that. He turned his head and whispered to Zhang Yi, actually, I don't know who he is either. Ever since I met him, all I know is that he's been hiding at the bottom of this lake. He's never talked about himself. Maybe his brain is frozen and he really thinks he's a frog. Zhang Yi rubbed his chin. This big frog was interesting. Do frogs deal with insects? That seems promising. He looked at the frog and asked, Hey, do you know how to deal with cockroaches? The frog rubbed its head. Cockroaches? Oh, I'm the Frog Village Chief. Dealing with bugs is my specialty. He raised a long finger. Let me share a little knowledge with you. Cockroaches are rich in protein and make excellent food. If you can find a lot of cockroaches now, I suggest you make them into food. They taste like chicken and are very good. Liang Yu's face was contorted. Thinking that the frog must have eaten a lot of cockroaches, she silently took a few steps back. Zhang Yi also gulped a few times. If you can handle those things, I hope you can do me a favor. Because I have a lot of cockroaches that need to be dealt with. And after you help me with this, I'll give you other rewards. To make a long story short, Zhang Yi directly told them his identity. He was the ruler of Tianhai City and the most powerful mutant in the Jiangnan region. Gao Tianwu listened in shock, his entire body frozen in place. After the apocalypse, although he had awakened his supernatural abilities, he had always remained in the vicinity of Gaoyuan village. He had no way of obtaining information about the outside world. What Zhang Yi said sounded like gibberish to him. But it also stirred up some desires in his heart. Like Zhang Yi, he was just a child from an ordinary family. With the world undergoing great changes, he possessed supernatural powers. If he could seize this opportunity and follow Zhang Yi, then maybe one day, he could have a noble reputation, status, and power. In a person's lifetime, there are actually very few opportunities to change one's destiny. If you seize it, you will live a life of wealth and honor, but if you don't, you may only be able to live a life of mediocrity. Now that he no longer had any ties to Gaoyuan village, he was still considering where to go next. Zhang Yi's appearance gave him a very good opportunity. So he couldn't help but take a step forward, his eyes burning like fire as he looked at Zhang Yi. Mr. Zhang. Are you saying that Tianhai City is now infested with cockroaches? Then can you give us a chance to solve this problem? As he spoke, he slapped Frog on the shoulder. Frog was stunned and stared at him blankly. What does this have to do with me? Zhang Yi smiled, crossed his arms, and looked at him meaningfully. You? Can you do it? Gao Tianwu gritted his teeth and said loudly, give me food. 10 days, 10 days to take down the cockroaches in Tianhai City. Gao Tianwu looked at Zhang Yi earnestly, his eyes filled with an unyielding determination to fight against fate and climb to the top. He didn't want to miss this opportunity. If he missed Zhang Yi today, he might never have the chance to meet someone of his caliber again in his entire life. The frog beside him stared at him in astonishment, as if to say, what does this have to do with me? Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. You? The cockroach infestation in Tianhai City was giving Zhang Yi a headache, and he had to borrow experts from Blizzard City to solve it. The mutant in front of him didn't seem to have any special abilities. He didn't have any elite soldiers or generals under his command, so what gave him the right to make such a bold claim? Was it because of the frog next to him? Zhang Yi smiled and said, why should I believe you? Gao Tianwu's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, the frog village chief and I have a way to deal with them. Although there are many insects, the village chief is their nemesis. My brothers and I can also lend a hand. As long as you can give us a bowl of rice to eat, we will completely rid Tianhai City of the insect plague. Zhang Yi lowered his eyelids. All right, I can give you this opportunity. He wasn't in a hurry, so there was no harm in giving Gao Tianwu a chance. Even if they failed, Zhang Yi wouldn't lose anything, at most he would just give them some supplies. But if Gao Tianwu and his men succeeded, then perhaps Zhang Yi would have to consider training them well and strengthening Tianhai City's military defenses. Zhang Yi said to Gao Tianwu, I will give you sufficient food, cold weather supplies, and weapons. In 10 days, according to the time you said, I'll see what you can do. Gao Tianwu was overjoyed. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, I will definitely do my best to solve the insect infestation in Tianhai City for you. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, we'll see. The group turned to return to Gaoyuan village. The frog, however, looked confused and said to Gao Tianwu, Gua. Gao Tianwu, although we have a good relationship, shouldn't you ask my opinion first? Gao Tianwu hurriedly said to the frog, don't you like eating cockroaches? This time, you can eat your fill and even stock up on food for a few years. What's so bad about that? Besides, look at those two. Gao Tianwu gestured with his eyes toward Zhang Yi and Liang Yu. Their strength is unfathomable. We'd better be smart and cooperate with them. If we don't accept their kindness, won't we be asking for trouble? Ribbit? The frog scratched his big head thoughtfully. You seem to have a point, Ribbit. Zhang Yi and the others returned to Gaoyuan village and entered Gao Tianwu's house. From a distance, Zhang Yi saw the villagers looking at them suspiciously. He smiled dismissively, then directly opened the dimensional space and took out a large amount of supplies, which quickly piled up into a small mountain in the room. Such a magical feat left Gao Tianwu and the frog staring in amazement. The frog exclaimed in surprise, Croak. This is amazing. You must be a magician, right? Zhang Yi laughed and said, this is a supernatural power. You've turned into a frog, so you should know that people who undergo mutations will possess magical abilities. The frog said, wow, but I've never seen such magical powers before, croak croak. Gao Tianwu glanced at the ground and saw that there was a huge amount of supplies. There were supplies for keeping warm, weapons and ammunition, and a large amount of food. Although he had said he needed supplies for 10 days, what Zhang Yi had given him was enough to last for more than half a month. Gao Tianwu was suddenly moved. He knew that he had found the right person. Zhang Yi was not a strict big shot, but rather very generous. However, he didn't know that Zhang Yi was only generous to those who were valuable to him. If Gao Tianwu hadn't shown enough value, Zhang Yi wouldn't have wasted his time and supplies on him. Everything else is up to you. In 10 days, I will check your results. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he turned and left without asking a single question about Gao Tianwu's plan. As the Party A, he only cared about the results that Party B gave him and would never interfere with the process. Gao Tianwu looked in the direction Zhang Yi had left, clutched a bag of bread tightly in his right hand, tore open the packaging, and stuffed it into his mouth in big bites. He had to recover his strength as quickly as possible and replenish the supernatural energy he had expended during the day. Then, together with his brothers, he would complete this important task. As long as I can complete the task Mr. Zhang has given me, maybe I can leave Gaoyuan village and go to Tianhai City. If I can become his subordinate, I will have the opportunity to become successful in the future. He chewed his food in big bites, not forgetting to take some food and drink to his injured brothers. The frog looked at Gao Tianwu and said helplessly, "The insect disaster in Tianhai City seems to be very serious. I can hear the insects chirping underground even when I'm sleeping. Isn't that perfect? If it were such an easy problem to solve, it wouldn't be our turn to deal with it. Frog, you must help me this time." Gao Tianwu looked at the frog seriously and said, "Of course. After all, there's so much good food, I wouldn't miss this opportunity." The frog picked up a bag of chicken legs from the ground, tore it open, and stuffed it into his big mouth, then swallowed it with relish. Crunchy, cockroach flavor. The frog gave a thumbs up, even though he only had 3 fingers left. After Zhang Yi returned to the shelter, he told his family about the interesting things he encountered in Gaoyuan village. Everyone was curious about the guy who turned into a frog, but they were still very skeptical about whether they could solve the cockroach problem. After all, even Zhang Yi had to seek help from the experts in Blizzard City. Not to mention that there are people behind the scenes manipulating everything. Yang Xinxin twirled her hair with her fingers and said lightly, "But if we really find that they are talented, we can recruit them to work for us. After all, Tianhai City is suffering from a serious talent shortage." Zhang Yi nodded, "I think so too. It's only a small expense, so let's just treat it as a game." At this moment in Tianhai City, the second wave of cockroaches had just been suppressed. New mutants had already begun to appear. There was no doubt that someone was behind this. Zhang Yi was testing their patience to see who would give in first. He couldn't rush at this point, or else he would be fighting a shadow with no place to use his strength. That night, Gao Tianwu and his brothers had a hearty meal. Although they had been exhausted from a long day and beaten up by the rebellious villagers, Gao Tianwu and Xiao Guang were mutants and recovered quickly. The other brothers had also undergone countless trials and tribulations after the apocalypse and were physically strong, so they were not easily defeated. Gao Tianwu lit a fire to warm his brothers. As the temperature rose, everyone felt much better. The frog didn't seem to like the fire, so it ran to a bed far away and fell fast asleep. After all, frogs need to hibernate. If it was happy, it could sleep for several months. So even if it didn't eat or drink for several months, it wouldn't starve to death. Gao Tianwu discussed with his brothers, "I don't plan to stay in Gaoyuan village. We must do our best to complete Mr. Zhang's task. As long as we do a good job, we will be able to follow Mr. Zhang and have a bright future." Xiao Guang's face was gloomy as he said coldly, "Those ungrateful little people, I won't let them get away with this." Just a few hours ago, he had been almost thrown into boiling water to be cooked like a pig. Snap! He broke a piece of firewood with his hand and threw it into the fire. The other brothers also had fierce expressions on their faces. They were all young and strong, in the prime of their lives. In order to protect their brothers in the village, they were willing to fight with their lives. But being betrayed by the very people they protected made them furious. Xiao Guang looked at Gao Tianwu, "Brother Wu, let's kill those ungrateful bastards." The others also looked at Gao Tianwu, waiting for him to give the order. As long as Gao Tianwu gave the word, they would take action tomorrow. Gao Tianwu frowned. They had grown up in the village since childhood, and they knew all the villagers. Many of them were even relatives. He thought for a moment and added a log to the fire. "We can't go too far. Most of them were just following the crowd and were swayed by Meng Chuan and the others. Then he raised his head, a fierce glint flashing in his eyes. But none of those who attacked us brothers today were innocent. Those guys must die. Everyone nodded in agreement with Gao Tianwu. Just then, there was a knock on the door. The brothers looked outside with grim expressions. Who is it? An old voice came from outside the door. Gao Tianwu, Xiao Guang, it's me, fourth grandfather. Fourth grandfather was an elder in Gaoyuan village. Most people in Gaoyuan village had the surname Gao, so seniority was very important. Gao Tianwu didn't say anything, but Xiao Guang stood up and walked over to open the door. They saw fourth grandfather with several members of the Gao family, all looking nervous and ingratiating as they looked at them. Xiao Guang, are you okay? Those damn beasts actually wanted to do that to you. They deserve to die. But we knew nothing about this. Don't get the wrong idea. Xiao Guang was tall and looked down on the people in front of him. He still remembered that among the Gao family members behind fourth grandfather, there were two who were the most vocal at the time, who wanted to throw him into boiling water and cook him to eat. Xiao Guang twisted the corner of his mouth and said, "Don't worry, we're all family." How could I misunderstand you? Fourth grandfather and the others heard this and their hearts immediately calmed down. That's right, we're all family. We're not like that Meng guy. He's a bad seed. Whatever you do in the future, we'll support you all the way. After flattering him for a while, the group left with peace of mind. They didn't notice the cold smile on Xiao Guang's lips. Xiao Guang closed the door, returned to the fire, picked up a roasted leg of mutton, and gnawed on it vigorously. The brothers beside him asked in confusion, "Xiao Guang, why were you so polite to them? I remember that era we kicked you a few times." Xiao Guang smiled and his eyes flashed coldly. "We're still injured. Don't mess with them at this time. Wait until we've rested, then we'll get revenge and not let a single one of them escape." Everyone finally understood and immediately smiled meaningfully. Behind them, other families came over one after another, swearing that they had not participated in the incident. Gao Tianwu and the others followed suit and calmed them down first. When it was time to sleep, they didn't dare to all go to bed, but took turns keeping watch. The next day, the Gao brothers had rested and eaten their fill, and were almost back to normal. Gao Tianwu took a steel wine flask out of his pocket, took 2 gulps, and then passed it to Xiao Guang, who passed it on to the others. After everyone had finished drinking, Gao Tianwu closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was resolute and determined, without a trace of hesitation. "Let's go. Don't leave a single person who participated in the attack last night alive." It was still early in the morning, and the villagers had not yet left their homes. In addition, food was scarce, so most of them were lying in their beds. The brothers took the weapons Zhang Yi had given them and went out, searching house to house for the people who had attacked them the previous day to settle the score. In the early morning of Gaoyuan village, occasional gunshots could be heard. In less than 10 minutes, those people all returned. Frog sat near Gao Tianwu, took out a vertical flute from somewhere, and carefully rubbed it. Gao Tianwu saw the bloodstains on everyone's bodies and knew that it was over. "From now on, we have no connection with Gaoyuan village." Gao Tianwu shouted, "Let's go!" Xiao Guang's body suddenly began to twist, then fell to the ground, his limbs twisted strangely. A moment later, he turned into a car. His ability was Autobot, and everyone jokingly called him a support member. Because Xiao Guang used to be a driver, he was particularly fond of cars. He never expected that after awakening his supernatural ability, he would turn into a car and let others drive him. "Xiao Guang, can you hold on?" Gao Tianwu looked at the large amount of supplies that had been packed into the backpacks and asked Xiao Guang. Xiao Guang replied, "Don't worry, I've eaten my fill and drunk my fill. I'm full of energy now." Everyone stuffed all the supplies into the car and squeezed in. "Let's go!" Xiao Guang's car roared and left Gaoyuan village, heading for Tianhai City. Quack! The big frog jumped out several dozen meters and kept up with the car. After they left, the villagers timidly came out of their houses. When they saw that many people had been killed, they began to wail and curse Gao Tianwu and his men, saying that they were not human. But this no longer had anything to do with Gao Tianwu and his brothers. Without food and having lost their protectors, they would not survive the winter. Gao Tianwu took 7 or 8 brothers with him and left Gaoyuan village on the Shaoguang train, heading for downtown Tianhai City. That place had once been where they longed to be. The brothers had always wanted to go there to seek their fortune. They knew that there would be more resources in the big city, allowing them to live better lives. However, at that time, the villagers of Gaoyuan village begged Gao Tianwu to stay and protect them. Out of consideration for his fellow villagers, Gao Tianwu ultimately chose to stay in Gaoyuan village. But now, all that was in the past. They no longer had any worries, and now they were working for Zhang Yi, the ruler of Tianhai City, so they could go to Tianhai City with their heads held high. Croak croak, croak croak, along the way, the sound of frogs echoed. Each time it leaped high into the air and then gently landed, its voice reverberated across the entire landscape. The ability of frog croak echoes when it comes into contact with an object. It is especially sensitive to insects. In this way, frogs can discover prey within their target area. Gao Tianwu and the others followed behind it and were able to find the location of the cockroach swarm. Everyone arrived at the Ao mountain area, a remote and uninhabited place. Everyone got out of the car, and Gao Tianwu took out some food and stuffed it into Xiao Guang's mouth, which was now at the front of the car. Xiao Guang ate voraciously to replenish his strength. Looking at the vast land before him, Gao Tianwu felt a surge of heroic emotion. From now on, we will form a new group. This group will be called the School of Wu. He pointed at the ground beneath his feet. We will start here and lay the foundation for our group. The brothers around him were all excited. When they were young, who didn't want to achieve great things and make a name for themselves? Now that they were living in turbulent times, it was the perfect opportunity for them to show their skills. Frog couldn't care less about any of this. He was focused on polishing his beloved flute, then rolling around in the snow. Anyway, he was thick-skinned, so the bitter cold didn't bother him at all. No matter what, he was always happy. Seeing this, Gao Tianwu shook his head helplessly. Frog, did you hear what I said? The frog turned his head towards him. Croak. I heard you. You said there's a lot of food here, right? Croak, croak, croak. Gao Tianwu looked at the frog's smiling face and felt quite helpless. All right, let's get to work. We have 10 days to search every corner of Tianhai City. The others might not be able to do it, but they had Xiao Guang's cars, so it wouldn't be a problem. The car consumed 2 chicken legs per 100 kilometers, had an automatic driving function, were natural and pollution-free, and even emitted green organic fertilizer as exhaust. The brothers of the School of Wu had all worked in Tianhai City, so they were quite familiar with the area. They chose Ao Mountain first because it was a relatively poor area of Tianhai City with a large population of migrants and a lot of garbage. Since there were so many cockroaches, it was likely that this was where they originated. Frog, let's get started. Use your flute to attract the cockroaches. Gao Tianwu said to Frog. Croak, okay, no problem. Leave it to me. Please prick up your ears and listen carefully to my beautiful performance. Croak, croak, croak. The frog put the flute in his mouth and moved his 6 fingers deftly over the holes. He stood on the snow, dancing and gesturing, looking like a street performer. But surprisingly, the music he played was incredibly beautiful. The melodious tune intoxicated the brothers of the School of Wu. The music was melodious and gentle, turning into waves of sound that spread across the vast snowfield, penetrating the thick layer of snow and mud and entering the ground. Before long, the ice around them began to make a rustling sound, which was the sound of cracks appearing in the ice and snow. The scene that followed made Gao Tianwu and the others swallow hard. The snowfield, which had originally looked pure and white, was suddenly covered with a large number of black cockroaches that spread toward them like a tide. The frogs continued to sing their elegant songs, completely oblivious to the huge swarm of cockroaches. The cockroaches also behaved strangely, as if they were immersed in the melodious music, and did not attack Gao Tianwu and the others. Now! Gao Tianwu leaped up and jumped onto Xiao Guang's car. He spread his arms wide, and a layer of red light suddenly appeared all over his body. Who? A raging flame instantly burned on his body. 5 roads of enlightenment, Makokai, Prajna karmic flame. He formed a diamond-shaped seal with his hands, condensed a hole, and then sprayed a large amount of flames from the hole, rushing straight towards the cockroach tide like a fire dragon. The brothers of the school of Wu took out various weapons they had prepared, which were all explosives provided by Zhang Yi, and began to attack the cockroach tide. The cockroaches seemed to have lost consciousness, allowing the school of Wu to attack them without putting up any resistance. These creatures, which reproduced in large numbers and were led by their tribe, only had the instinct to eat and reproduce. Frogs were their greatest nemesis, and his ability, Zerg Nemesis, could easily confuse these brainless, low-IQ insects. The frog hopped around and played his song, and as the song continued, the tide of cockroaches grew denser and denser, covering the entire land. Gao Tianwu and his brothers fought with all their might. After more than half an hour, the entire snowfield fell silent. The black cockroach corpses were densely packed across the entire snowy plain, making people's scalps tingle. At this moment, the frog also stopped playing. Seeing the food all over the ground, he clapped his hands excitedly. Croak! Croak croak! So much food, it smells so good. He opened his big mouth and shot out a pink tongue that was 7 or 8 meters long. Who knew how he hid that thing in his mouth? He just rolled it around on the snow, and a large number of charred cockroaches entered his mouth. The frog ate with a look of ecstasy on his face, making the brothers of the school of Wu feel nauseous. Is this thing really that delicious? Xiao Guang couldn't help but ask. Although they had a natural aversion to cockroaches. However, after the apocalypse, they had tried many things that were inedible, such as rats. Nowadays, their stomachs could tolerate many foods. How about we try it? Gao Tianwu thought about it, walked over, picked up a cockroach, and threw it into his mouth. After eating it, he was surprised to find that it tasted pretty good. They didn't know that the 3 major bases in Tianhai City still preserve the manufacturing process for cockroach protein. When cooked, these cockroaches actually tasted not too different from chicken legs. Everyone was exhausted, so they gathered around, picked up the cooked cockroaches, and devoured them with relish. Cockroaches are truly a wonderful thing. If this had come along sooner, no one in the village would have starved to death. Yeah, how did these things suddenly become so numerous? What do they eat? One of the men stuffed 2 cockroaches into his mouth and asked casually. But this one sentence stopped everyone from eating. What to eat? What else is there to eat? Everyone looked at each other, and the only sound in the air was the sound of the frog eating. It seemed to be enjoying its meal. Shit, who cares? After a moment's hesitation, everyone continued eating. Gao Tianwu, Frog, and the others spent the next few hours in Tianhai City, killing cockroaches everywhere. With Frog's help, even if the cockroaches were dozens of meters underground, Frog could find them with pinpoint accuracy. Then he used his vertical flute to lure the cockroaches out, and Gao Tianwu and the others killed them. The whole operation went very smoothly. The vast majority of cockroaches were unable to resist the temptation of the frog croaks. They basically didn't rest much either. Except for sleeping, they spent every day killing insects. The problem of food was also easy to solve. Zhang Yi prepared a large amount of food for them, but slowly, they actually fell in love with eating hot, high-protein cockroach meat. In particular, some of the larger cockroaches could grow to the size of kittens, puppies, or even humans. They were rich in protein, enough to give the people of the school of Wu a good meal. When people are hungry for a long time, they gradually become numb to food, and even gradually grow to like it. Zhang Yi noticed all of this. He never imagined that these guys were actually so capable. Especially that frog, which actually played the biggest role in the entire plan. Frogs are effective against insects, which makes sense. Yang Xinxin said, Although they can kill the cockroaches, if they can't get rid of the root cause, the cockroach problem won't go away. Moreover, with the survival of the fittest among the cockroaches, only the ones with stronger survival skills will remain, which will only make the situation more troublesome. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yi put his hands together, rubbed them slowly, and then said indifferently, in the worst case, the cockroaches will become stronger and attack the shelter in the 3 major bases. But that's not a problem for me. I don't have the ability to actively eliminate large numbers of cockroaches, but I can still defend the bases in Tianhai City. Their goal can't be just to harass me, they must have other ideas. That's why I gave Gao Tianwu and that frog a chance to see if they can create a miracle for me. Don't worry, let's just wait quietly. The advantage is on our side. Zhang Yi said indifferently. Yang Xinxin nodded, but immediately, a dark gleam appeared in her amber pupils. She turned her head to Zhang Yi and said, "But brother, I have another idea. If the other side just wants to cause trouble for Tianhai City, that's no big deal. But if the other side is an unexpected powerful enemy of yours and they're targeting you, shouldn't we take the initiative and let them show themselves?" This sentence immediately alerted Zhang Yi. "Don't say anything, I actually have someone in mind." The two looked at each other and said in unison, "Gao Changkong." At that time, Gao Changkong had laid out a complex plan, toyed with the entire Jiangnan region, and had almost succeeded in killing Zhu Zheng and ascending to power. However, all of that was ruined by the sudden emergence of Zhang Yi. It was impossible to say that Gao Changkong didn't hold a grudge against Zhang Yi. Now, thinking it over, Gao Changkong was the most likely suspect to have the power or the lack of restraint to launch an attack on Zhang Yi. But Zhang Yi quickly shook his head. If he really had the means to do so, he should have gone after Zhu Zheng. "What's the point of coming after me?" Yang Xinxin lowered her head and said in a low voice, "The hatred in people's hearts is immeasurable. Brother, not everyone is like you. Some people, because they don't dare to take action against powerful enemies, turn their revenge on others." Zhang Yi frowned. Gao Changkong. He was a deeply calculating opponent whom even Zhang Yi was wary of. If a person wasn't patient enough, how could they plan for so long, hide their true feelings, and even completely conceal their abilities under the watchful eyes of so many people in the Jiangnan region? Could it be him? Zhang Yi pondered. Yang Xinxin said, "Whether it's him or not, we still have to be prepared. If the other party really wants to take revenge on my brother through us and the 3 major bases, what can we do if we give him a chance?" Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows, seeming to understand Yang Xinxin's thoughts. "That sounds interesting." Led by Gao Tianwu and the frog, the people of the school of Wu worked tirelessly to exterminate the cockroach swarm throughout Tianhai City. The ability of the Zerd Nemesis made it very easy for them to exterminate the cockroach swarm. In less than 10 days, most of the cockroach swarm in Tianhai City was exterminated. Even the insect extermination experts at Zhang Yi's home were amazed. They said to Zhang Yi, "Perhaps compared to us, these people are better at solving the cockroach problem. Because we only kill cockroaches through the spread of genetic drugs. But they have the ability to actively search for cockroaches. If that's the case, they might actually find the cockroach swarm's base." Zhang Yi listened to this and agreed wholeheartedly. The ability of that frog is really interesting. Not to mention anything else, when it came to dealing with insects, the frog was the epsilon. The speed at which it killed insects was a headache for the insect master who raised cockroaches in the West Mountain base. It took a lot of time to raise a new batch of insects. Even cockroaches had to grow before they could help him wreak havoc in Tianhai City. However, he did not know what methods the other party had used to destroy such a large number of insects in such a short time. If it's just killing insects, it doesn't matter how many times they come back. The insect master clutched a huge cockroach in his hand, his ugly face contorted and his eyes filled with cruelty. "The reason I chose cockroaches is because they are the insects with the strongest reproductive ability and the most tenacious vitality. As long as my existence is not discovered, sooner or later, Tianhai City will be overwhelmed by an increasingly powerful cockroach swarm. Even you, Zhang Yi, have no way of dealing with these things, right?" He. However, the insect master did not know that Gao Tianwu and his brothers from the school of Wu, as well as the frog who called himself Haruki Murakami, had already arrived in the West Mountain area. Outside the West Mountain base, Xiao Guang's car was parked far away on the snowy plain. Croak, croak, the frog's calls echoed across the vast snowfield. Though the sound couldn't travel far, its sound waves covered an area of 5 kilometers in all directions. Within this range, any abnormal creatures would be detected, especially insects. They traveled westward from the Ao mountain range, flattening numerous insect swarms. As they advanced southwestward, they inevitably passed through the West Mountain Range. This place was now a wasteland, and due to the absence of human activity, it appeared even more desolate. Gao Tianwu deduced that there might be a large number of cockroaches underground here. They just wanted to clean up the place in order. However, when the frog scanned the area, the smile that had always been on his face suddenly froze. Rarely, the corners of his mouth sank, and his expression became cautious. Gao Tianwu sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" "Croak. I sense something unusual here." The frog's eyes moved down to look at his feet. His huge feet stepped on the accumulated snow. "Croak. There's a terrifying number of insects hiding down there. And there are also many terrifying big ones." He glanced at Gao Tianwu. "Maybe we found the cockroach's nest." Gao Tianwu was stunned for a moment, then said with surprise, "Great. We've been searching high and low, and now we've found them. This way, we don't have to run all over Tianhai City looking for them." But the frog said to Gao Tianwu, "But do you remember what Mr. Zhang said to you before he left?" Rib bit. Of course Gao Tianwu remembered. Zhang Yi had warned them that there might be mutants behind the cockroach invasion. That was why Zhang Yi had left Gao Tianwu a communication device. Once they discovered any traces of mutant activity, they were to notify Zhang Yi immediately so he could deal with it. After all, if the enemy dared to attack Zhang Yi in secret, then his strength should not be underestimated. Gao Tianwu clenched his fists, suddenly raised his head and looked at the frog with a determined look in his eyes and said, "No, this problem must be solved by us." The frog was confused. "Rib bit?" He spread his huge webbed feet helplessly and said, "Gao Tianwu, if we really find the cockroach's lair, then our mission will be complete. There's no need to continue taking risks." Gao Tianwu shook his head. "I don't think so. If I only find the cockroach's lair, at most I'll get a reward from that person. But I want more than that. I want to take my brothers and settle down in Tianhai City. To do that, we must gain Mr. Zhang's approval. So, I have to seize this opportunity to prove the strength of our brothers. Only by showing our worth will they have a reason to accept us. I have to consider whether this is my only chance in life." Gao Tianwu's impassioned speech inspired even the frog, who had been somewhat hesitant. His brothers behind him had already picked up their weapons, ready to fight a fierce battle to the death. The frog stared at Gao Tianwu. Gao Tianwu also stared at the frog. "Old friend, help me one more time." "Croak." The frog nodded, then turned and leaped forward. It landed on all 4 feet, sucked in air, and then its round belly swelled up. Then, an even louder frog croak instantly rang out across the snowy plain. "Croak! Croak! Croak!" The frog croaks pierced the earth and reached the underground West Mountain base, echoing continuously among the ruins. Upon hearing this sound, all the cockroaches were as if possessed, turning around and crawling toward the outside. The ugly insect master was startled, and a fierce look appeared on his face. Have I been found?" Outside the West Mountain base, the frogs croaking echoed continuously. This was a declaration of war. They would not enter the underground to fight, but if the enemy did not come out, the frog's Zerg nemesis would destroy almost all of the mutated cockroaches underground. Gao Tianwu and his brothers' expressions were as stern as steel. At this moment, they were ready to fight and even sacrifice themselves. To rise above the rest and fight for a future, the only thing they could bet was their lives. If they won, they would gain wealth and honor. If they lost, they would simply die. After the apocalypse, having seen so much death, many of them were no longer afraid of it. They were only afraid of dying without meaning. Boom! A rumbling sound came from beneath the earth. Thick layers of snow broke into pieces, and then a tide of cockroaches emerged. They were densely packed, like a floodgate had been opened to release long-accumulated floodwaters. This was the cockroach's lair, the ugly bug master's experimental base. Therefore, all of the cockroaches here were the fathers and mothers of the mutated cockroaches in Tianhai City. They were even bigger and more terrifying, with palm-sized cockroaches all over the ground. The frog raised its vertical flute and began to dance and play. With the blessing of the flute, its frog croaks could be heard even further away. The cockroaches surrounded everyone, but instead of attacking, they lay quietly on the ground as if spellbound, listening to the frog's song. Attack! Gao Tian was struck with both hands, and red flames flowed over his body. He pushed forward with both palms, and one after another, flames the size of human heads fell into the swarm of cockroaches. Soon, the swarm of cockroaches was burning. They were high-protein creatures, very easy to burn, and once they burned, it was a large area. They were very experienced in dealing with this. Ordinary cockroaches were no match for frogs, their natural enemies, and were unable to fight back until they died. However, Gao Tianwu knew that things were not that simple. If this really is the cockroach's nest, then there must be even more difficult creatures to deal with. Gao Tianwu looked around cautiously. Suddenly, the frog opened his eyes, which had been intoxicated by the music. He looked in a certain direction, his gaze becoming sharp, then gave Gao Tianwu a nod. Gao Tianwu understood and immediately looked in that direction. It was a mountain peak covered in snow. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from inside the mountain peak, and large chunks of snow began to collapse in an avalanche. Behind the collapsing snow, a large shadow slowly appeared. Snow flew everywhere, and the shadows began to slowly approach Gao Tianwu and the others. After the snowflakes fell, their shadows were revealed. It was a strange man with a hideous face like an evil ghost. His face was disfigured, as if it had been randomly pieced together. His body was skinny and emaciated, but his eyes were a disgusting yellowish-white color. He looked like a human cockroach, staring intently at Gao Tianwu and the others, making the Gao brothers feel a little nervous. Sure enough, Mr. Zhang was right. There really is a mastermind behind this. The ugly bug master, the mastermind behind the cockroach invasion of Tianhai City, had finally appeared. No one knew who he was because his features had lost all human form. But Gao Tianwu and the others knew that he was extremely dangerous. Because surrounding him were dozens of giant cockroaches 2 to 3 meters long. They had never encountered such creatures before. Each cockroach's shell was a disgusting feces yellow color, and it had huge wings growing out of its back. Xiao Guang and the others were all stunned. These. Such big cockroaches, how much kitchen waste do they have to eat? Gao Tianwu said in a deep voice, "Kill them." The insect master laughed coldly, "He, I thought it was Zhang Yi, but it turns out to be a little punk. Then you'll all die here and become fertilizer for my babies." No sooner had he finished speaking than the dozens of cockroaches around him leaped up and rushed towards Gao Tianwu and the others like bullets. Gao Tianwu roared angrily, put his hands together, and a layer of golden light appeared all over his body. In the next moment, his body was like a Buddha statue in a temple, majestic and solemn, and his skin turned the color of a Buddha statue. When Gao Tianwu was 8 years old, his parents took him to Shaoshi Mountain to worship Buddha. At that time, a high monk told his parents that he had a natural affinity with Buddhism. Since then, although he had not entered the Buddhist sect, he firmly believed in Zen Buddhism. Buddhism is a philosophy that can deeply touch people's hearts. The power of his faith allowed him to develop supernatural abilities and begin to move closer to the realm of Buddha. Just like his ability, 5 Roads of Enlightenment, which originated from the guardian deity of Buddhism. Golden Enlightenment. Gao Tianwu was enveloped in a golden light and faced the monsters flying towards him, leaping forward to meet them head-on. Behind him, his brothers from the school of Wu did not slacken their efforts, roaring as they pulled the triggers and fired their rifles at the monsters. The frog began to play the vertical flute faster and faster. Although the power of Zerg Nemesis could not completely suppress these mutated giant cockroaches, it was able to have a certain effect, greatly restricting their movement. Gao Tianwu relied on the protection of the Buddha's light and fought hand-to-hand with those giant cockroaches. Xiao Guang was even more direct. After transforming into a car, he revved the engine and, relying on his thick skin, crashed directly into a cockroach. Gao Tianwu's fist slammed into a cockroach, instantly knocking the 2-meter-tall cockroach 4 or 5 meters away, where it rolled around in the snow several times. However, these creatures' defenses and vitality were too strong, and they quickly got back up, flapping their wings and charging at Gao Tianwu again. Soon, he was surrounded by a large group of cockroaches. There was no fear on Gao Tianwu's face. Since he dared to come and deal with these cockroaches, he was prepared. He took out a bottle of strong liquor from his bosom, drank it, and then opened his mouth and sprayed out a torrent of flames. Makai Enlightenment, Prajna Karmic Flame. Insects fear fire the most, it is their nature. As soon as Gao Tianwu's flames appeared, the cockroaches around him were instantly scared into retreating. "Big brother, I'm here." Xiao Guang emitted a rumbling exhaust and then rushed into the battlefield. He flew into the air, the trunk automatically opened, and a dozen plastic barrels fell out. The barrels hit the hard ground with a smash, and shattered instantly, sending gasoline flying everywhere. The cockroaches were inevitably splashed by the gasoline. Gao Tianwu took the opportunity to release a burst of flame and slammed his right fist into the ground. Immediately, a fire dragon followed the trail of gasoline and rushed straight towards the cockroaches. Whoosh! A raging fire suddenly broke out, engulfing a group of cockroaches, which were so frightened that they lost control. Fearing fire was their instinct. For a moment, dozens of giant cockroaches didn't dare to attack Gao Tianwu and the others, choosing instead to hide. This scene infuriated the insect master. But after all, they were low-level creatures. How could he expect them to be alive, have no brains, and still possess powerful fighting abilities? He shifted his gaze and discovered the problem. On the surface, Gao Tianwu and the others were the main force in the battle. In fact, the one with the greatest impact on the cockroach tide was the frog. If he could kill it, the cockroach tide would not be affected, and Gao Tianwu and the others would be doomed. The insect master opened his mouth and emitted an insect's chirp. Upon receiving the command, 5 or 6 giant cockroaches immediately flew toward the frog. Seeing this, the frog had no choice but to stop playing. Gua! Are the insects trying to eat the frog? Facing the attack of the giant cockroaches, he directly stood up and charged forward. The cockroach's huge claws stabbed at the frog, but the frog's snow-white belly did not flinch or dodge, and collided with the cockroach. Not only was it unharmed, but the cockroach was violently thrown dozens of meters away like a bullet. It extended its long tongue, which whipped like a whip, and the sticky substance on its tongue quickly bound the other giant cockroaches together, forming a cockroach ball. Gua! The frog just doesn't like fighting, but when it comes to dealing with insects, the frog won't lose. The frog slapped its belly and laughed happily. The frog was a pacifist. But that didn't mean he wasn't strong. If that were the case, why would Gao Tianwu treat him with such courtesy and give him food to build a relationship? The insect master's expression darkened. He already sensed that something was wrong. But what could he do? He was just an insect master, whose abilities were to control insects and drive the evolution of insect swarms. But he couldn't fight himself. In order to cause trouble for Tianhai City, he chose cockroaches as his hosts. However, he didn't expect to encounter the frog, his nemesis. "Damn it, all of you die!" The insect master roared, pulled out a sword, and slowly cut his wrist. He was skinny, and the blood that flowed out was green. The giant cockroaches around him smelled the blood and quickly surrounded him. After the insect master fed his blood to the cockroaches, their eyes suddenly flashed red. Screech! The cockroaches let out a fierce cry. Gao Tianwu and the others' expressions sank, knowing that their opponent was going to fight to the death.